If you love Baltimore sports, you'll love WNST.net.
Welcome back to WNST Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. I'm here in Cooperstown at the Hall of Fame, and I always begin here. Believe it or not, the first time I came here was probably about 20 years ago, and Louis was inducted here in 1984. And I walked into this room, and the room was different then. It was smaller then. They've been adding plaques here every year for 20 years since then. And I walked right in, and I walked over to look at the first thing, and this was the first thing I saw. Kind of weird, but Brad Horn's here. He is the Director of Communications and also Community, right? Is that what else? What are your education? You have all of that kind of thing,
Absolutely. Right? We're a 501c3, independent of MLB. So our goal is to educate about the role of baseball and its impact on American culture. So we have this great gallery that honors the game's greatest players, managers, umpires, and executives. But at the same time, we're teaching math, science, character education, 17 modules, really on a daily basis to school kids that come through our front doors, through distance learning technology, and through outreach programs that show baseball as a cultural institution and the events that happen within sport oftentimes mirroring the role of American society.
And don't we know that? Well, we're going to take a look around the Hall of Fame today. Brad's going to show us around a little bit. We're going to do some radio here, and I'll probably see some of my childhood heroes here as well. And I love, let me see memories here. I love all the no-hitter balls, right? And we always say, well, when something happened, that bat or that glove or that something got sent to the Hall of Fame. Well, it's all here, and we're going to see it today in Cooperstown. Day 5 of the GiveASpit tour right there. And the National Leukemia Awareness Campaign continues. We're swabbing folks. Go to GiveASpit.com, and GiveASpit is the hashtag at WNST.net, and we'll show you around a little bit. So if you're from Baltimore, you got to have the Babe, right? And then, of course, Ted Williams, my dad's favorite player, along with Stan Musial, as well as my wife's family's favorite player as well. Brad, tell us about this. Now, these are incredible likenesses. There's actually a wax museum, right? Down the street, Museum Wax, but these aren't made of wax at all, right?
No, there's an independently run wax museum on Main Street, but these are 2 pieces out of our museum collection, each crafted from a single piece of wood, the base included. Sculptor Armand Lamontagne donated these to the museum in 1984 and 1985.
84, wow, so they're 30 years they've
30
been
years
here.
that they've been here, and they remain such an iconic piece and attraction for museum visitors because they're so drawn to the Babe, so drawn to Ted Williams, and the reality, the lifelike capture of their likeness is so real. And
Babe looks like he's got a 5 o'clock shadow. Look, I mean, it's unbelievable.
And you can almost see what it's like to see the world when Babe Ruth played. So those are 2 guys that remain very key iconic figures here in baseball history, and in the middle of Yankees and Red Sox country, with all due respect to Mets and Oriole fans, these guys remain at the top of the hill.
I thought they'd have Earl Weaver in here, but this is the actual hall. These are the only things in here that aren't plaques, right? These are the only 2 objects in here.
Absolutely. This is obviously where all the plaques hang. We've got the class of 2015 going in over here to Babe's right a little bit later this summer. But this is the iconic plaque gallery, the most hallowed ground in sport that we feel represents all of the great players, 310 total, with the election of Randy Johnson, Craig Biggio, John Smoltz, and Pedro Martinez.
All right, let's go over here. I just want to see Cal Ripken because I found him over here. This is one of the fun parts about coming here because you come here and you're like, where's my guy? But it's in, so if you remember when they were inducted, but here's Cal Ripken, the Iron Man. Pretty good likeness of him too. I'm always shocked, especially when I go to like Canton. They make the bust, and some of them really look like the guy, and some of them really don't. I was looking at the statues at Camden Yards. They're all good, but Brooks doesn't look like Brooks. But all the rest of them look as good as those things over there do.
We're very meticulous with the design of this process. A sculptor out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania does the design in clay, and then the plaques are cast in bronze. And about 90 words that we use to sum up a player's career and contribution to the game, particularly 50 years into the future, so that a generation who may have never seen Cal Ripken play can have a sense of what his lasting impact on the game was.
All right, so I'm not going to show Cal without showing Tony Gwynn. Come on, here's Tony Gwynn. Tony died a year ago yesterday, and Tony was my friend, and we miss him, and we're going to be in San Diego, and I'll see his statue in a couple weeks when we get to Petco. We're here in Cooperstown having fun. So you don't have to be in the Hall of Fame to be in the Hall of Fame. As I said, you know, bats come, gloves come. Not everybody is, you know, Cal Ripken, but Brad, tell me about this room now. I've been in this room before. It's like a little bit of a clubhouse, but this is more for modern baseball, and these are the way the jerseys look today, not yesterday.
Yeah, this is what we called in today's game exhibit, a locker for each of the 30 major league clubs. And it's highlights from each of the last 10 to 12 years of the 30 teams. We only procure game-used artifacts, and we only procure them from historic moments. So fans may come in expecting to see the latest free agent acquisition from their team, but we're only going to collect artifacts from historic happenings. So here in the Baltimore Oriole locker, for example, a ball from Miguel Tejada's 1,000th straight game and his jersey from 2005. So
I didn't know that Matt Weeder's glove said Weedy on it.
Weedy.
There you go, Weedy.
That's
See
great.
that Weedy?
That's part of what the charm of artifacts and player equipment is that it's all personalized. It all represents, you can see Felix P.A.'s spikes from his...
Now there's some value there. I had Felix P.A.'s shirt. I gave it away to Goodwill, but that's another story altogether. I did eat the pie.
It's all about how we document historic achievements and give current generation fans a chance to connect to the team.
Nice, nice. This is beautiful in here, man. So it's all new jerseys, and look at World Series tickets up here in Cleveland. They haven't used those in a long time.
Yeah, those were printed in 2007. Of course, they fell
Check
short.
those out. Cool. So you talk about history in this room. Brad's going to tell us about these baseballs here. Apparently the oldest artifact you have is in storage right now, right? That's an Abner Doubleday sort of piece, correct?
We refer to it as the Doubleday ball. It's the ball that was used in the alleged mythical first game here in Cooperstown.
Mythical, so that we don't know if it's real.
We know that the artifact is real. It's just a matter of if the game was the first baseball game, which we date to June 12th of 1839. This room here is all about baseball's beginnings. And as you can see, baseball doesn't have a start date. It's evolved from bat and ball games. There's Egyptian drawings of guys with bats and balls. And then there's a document from Pittsfield, Massachusetts in 1791, a full 50 years before we believed that baseball was founded in 1839 here in Cooperstown, that prohibited baseball from being played in Pittsfield within 80 yards of the courthouse because they had just gotten new windows. So it was such a problem and such an epidemic at that time that baseball was already rampant. So we now know that baseball wasn't founded in Cooperstown.
Baseball was like a renegade thing at that point, right?
Absolutely. It was something that guys just played rough and tumble. It wasn't looked at as very gentlemanly of the day.
Well, the original game, you hitting the player with the ball was the way to get him out, right?
Yeah, well, there was
a lot of bruises.
All different rules that wouldn't.
But they were like New
fly
York
for the
rules and
day.
Pennsylvania rules, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so everywhere that the game was played, different clubs played with different rules. And that's what makes this Eckford baseball case so unique. What happened was that teams would commemorate their victories by taking a ball and gilding it and putting the final score on there. So you can see these scores: Eckford versus Athletic 32-25, Eckford versus Harlem 28-5. Scores that are outrageous
Crappy
for
pitching.
baseball today, but date back to the 1860s. So this is one of the most prized artifact collection that we have in Cooperstown because it shows baseball is a team sport played at a community level long before it was professional, and that is one thing that has stayed consistent throughout the last 150 years.
Before antitrust exemptions. So we're here where Babe Ruth lives, but he lives in the museum in Baltimore, but part of him lives here. A little piece of the Bambino here in Cooperstown. And, I don't think you can have a Hall of Fame without having a pretty big section on Babe Ruth, right, Brett?
We rededicated this space last year. We've always had a Babe Ruth room, but we wanted to delve further into the story. Baseball's greatest showman started his life in Baltimore, and we actually have a stone from St. Mary's Industrial School for Boys where Babe spent much of his childhood. So the game has never known a greater showman, a greater pitchman, and a greater talent. And his impact in baseball in the teens, 20s, and 30s in this country, we believe is as significant of an event as any single player's impact on
He's
baseball.
literally the original rock star, right? Not
Absolutely.
a movie, not an actor, not even a musician. He was literally the first really famous non-politician, non-Edison sort of inventor. All he did was drink beer, eat hot dogs, and hit home runs. And he was famous for that. And that's weird in 1920, right?
Huge. And if you walk through this museum or this exhibit, which is laid out like a scrapbook, you see how people flocked to see Babe Ruth. not to see necessarily his hitting talent, or his pitching talent, but just to see
the celebrity of him.
The celebrity, and he would do bowling tournaments and golf tournaments, and he was always smiling when a camera was around. He was probably Kim Kardashian of his era,
but he was also probably the first guy that realized he could make a lot of money by being nice to kids, right, and being nice to people, right,
and understood the value
endorsement,
of the photo opportunity,
right? Well, and that was back in the cigarette card days, right? Yeah. But he was the card everybody wanted, the original baseball card, right?
Exactly. Babe Ruth, the legend.
Playing with his hometown Orioles. We got to make sure we get that in there too. I like the part where it says troubled youth in Baltimore. Babe and I had a lot in common. Baseball and all the things we're doing on this tour. We're going to Kansas City to the Negro Baseball Hall of Fame. Brad, we got a lot of stuff here from the Negro Baseball Leagues. I'm seeing the Pittsburgh Crawfords here, and you have a whole room, and I saw Jackie Robinson before, but this is an important part of what you're doing here in Cooperstown.
Well, you really can't tell the story of baseball history without talking about the Negro Leagues. We explore the stories behind why African Americans were prevented from playing Major League Baseball, the stars prior to that era, and then those who excelled within the Negro Leagues, and then post-Negro Leagues. So within the exhibit, you're going to find the accomplishments of players like Perucha Cepeda, who was Orlando Cepeda's dad. You're going to see hate mail that Jackie Robinson received in his quest to break baseball's color barrier. The jersey that...
I remember this one.
Frank Robinson, the first African-American manager, was a player-manager when he joined in 1975 the Cleveland Indians, the first African-American manager.
I love that Indians Union in the 70s, man. And that screams 70s, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And Frank Robinson obviously is as much of a pioneer in terms of his contributions to breaking other levels of the game like Jackie Robinson. But this exhibit's really important to the fabric of understanding American culture and society. We're not trying to highlight a time when African Americans were not permitted to play. We're interested in telling the story of why they weren't permitted to play. So this exhibit is probably one of the most educational as it relates to American society and the role that baseball played with helping society get past a major issue.
This says donated by Michael Stanley. Is that the Michael Stanley from the Michael Stanley Band?
I could not tell you.
Cleveland. Now I saw Cleveland and Michael Stanley, and I'm thinking that might be the rock and roll guy there.
Maybe.
If it is, I'm going to find him in Cleveland. That's day 30. So we're here in the Latin American section. I hear the music. It's got a little rhythm to it. It's Viva Baseball. This is all the Latin American history, and I found the Venezuela stuff. So let's go find that first. We got Cuba, Dominican, Puerto Rico, Mexico, and Venezuela. And this is kind of cool, Brad. Now, I saw games in Maracaibo. I actually saw Greg Maddux pitch in Maracaibo in 1986, I believe it was. And but you really paid tribute. I don't think you can talk about baseball without talking about Latin players, right?
Absolutely not. In today's numbers, about 20 to 25% of all rosters feature players born in Latin America. With this exhibit that we opened a few years ago, we want to show that there's a rich, deep history of baseball in these nations. The passion, the joy, the flair. Not only is it players like Luis Aparicio who are groundbreakers, Omar Vizquel, for instance, who followed in the footsteps out of Venezuela, but it's players and how they approach the game, their stories, the hurdles and obstacles that they overcame to get to their big league dreams. That's what this exhibit's about, and it's all done through the eyes of this tremendous joy that Latin American players bring to baseball.
We have Luis Aparicio's jersey too. We got to show that. Now, if I'm going to wear a throwback in Chicago, that's going to be it right there. This is the original, right? This is like the second time around. This is early 70s, this jersey, right?
Yeah, 1970, his 11th All-Star game and his 9th Gold Glove Award.
And that's his glove.
That it is. The jersey is Luis Aparicio. The glove is another Venezuelan.
Chico Carrasquel. There you go.
Yes.
All right, and this is Vizquel. All right.
So we've got the generations here connected of Venezuelan shortstops, and Omar Vizquel may join the legacy of Luis Aparicio here in the Baseball Hall of Fame one day.
Look at how good those Venezuelan colors look, the yellow, blue, and red. Nice work. Right next to the Latin exhibit, the Baltimore Orioles. Can't tell the history of baseball without the Oriole Way here. Earl, Brooks, Jim, Cakes, Cal. Kind of feel like I'm out in center field at Camden Yards. Pretty good. In the Hall of Fame. I'm pretty convinced of that. But he is in the Hall of Fame. Because look, right here, this is Pete Rose's jersey from 1973. That batting helmet, man, with the one without the ear flaps, that looks like the batting helmets I used to buy on 33rd Street. I gotta go to my mom's garage and get those out. Probably worth a few bucks.
If you love Baltimore sports, you'll love WNST.net.